Okay, Freichel Chanuka, first night of Chanuka, Tashon Pei Aleph. As much as this video is not going to be posted, so I could be totally unprepared and maybe say things that I shouldn't be saying.
You're gonna label it for men only.
The Yontif of Chanuka is a Yontif of tremendous giluyim, and tremendous giluyim in Hasaga, in Or, and the tzaddikim of previous dairis, and I guess tzaddikim of in this dar, wherever they are, they experience a tremendous aliyah, ruchni, on Chanuka, something that's indescribable, and something that is somehow greater than other times of the year, despite the fact that Chanuka is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, it's a yontif d'Rabbanan. But there's something about Chanuka that is so enlightening, right? And that's the R of Chanuka, the hadlak of Chanuka. There's something about it that is so enlightening. That is something that tzaddikim talk about, how literally it fuels them for the year. The enlightenment that they get. The R of Chanuka is totally lights up their year. Now the emphasis that it's interesting that Yontif of Chanuka, which is really a Yontif of Menorah, and I made this hard to you the other night, right? Menorah, right? What was the nation of Menorah? They didn't have enough oil for 8 days of hadlaka. They only had enough oil for one night's hadlaka. How much oil did they put into the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash? They put a chatzilug into every cup. Okay, a chatzilug is about, a lug is somewhere between 3 and 4 ounces. A chatzilug is somewhere between 6 and 8 ounces. Okay, so decent sized cups, and it would burn. That was what they would light every night for the menorah. Why do you need so much, right? The answer is because the R of the menorah is supposed to burn the entire night. And they made a cheshbon of how much oil did you have to put in for the longest night of the year. Tekuvas Tevis, right? The winter solstice is the longest night of the year, right? Shortest day, longest night. And the longest night, you could have a 15-hour night, or whatever, 16-hour night, whatever, if it gets from 4:30 to 7:30, we're talking about a 15-hour night. So in order for the ner to burn 15 hours, you have to put a chatzilug in the winter, where the night it could be 9 hours, right? So you need a lot less oil, okay? But the shear of the menorah that they put in was the shear of Tekuvas Tevis, okay, which is the winter solstice. The what's interesting is that the Nes of Chanuka was they didn't have enough oil to burn kashir, right? When is the Nes of Chanuka? Literally at that tekufa of Tekuvas Tevis, right? That's what Chanuka right now. Also Tekuvas Tevis, right? Holding the longest nights of the year. And that's why it's called Tekuvas Tevis, or Chodesh Tevis, Tekuvas Tevis. Chanuka goes straight through, right, from Kislev, bridges Kislev to Tevis, and it's amazing that the Nes of Chanuka and the Nes of the menorah taka happened around the time where the menorah is literally, that's where the menorah gets its shiurim from. Meaning, to say it maybe just like to expand the point, menorah is most relevant in Tekuvas Tevis. As I come to you, so that is the Zman of the year. That's Kaveh, the Dinah Menorah, right? So it's interesting how the Nes of Chanuka, right, came out at the point, which is a Nes of the Menorah, happened at a time of year where the Menorah is literally the this is where menorah gets its dinim, where menorah is most relevant. Why is menorah most relevant to Tekuvas Tevis? Because menorah is an inyan of R, and so you want to know what the inyan of R is, right? R is something that kiyas and R min chayshach. When there's chayshach, R is a ma'ila, right? We learn by bedikas chametz, right, that you don't do bedika with a ner by day, because shraga b'tiar ma'yahani. Right, so R is only, its value of R is when you have chayshach. So the greatest value of menorah is going to be when there's the greatest chayshach, which is Tekuvas Tevis. So, with this in mind, just maybe this gives us sort of a hezber of why, as we go weiter in the Deiros, right, deeper and deeper into the darkness of Galus, why is it that the Nes of Chanukah, the Yontiv of Chanukah, becomes more and more relevant to us?
Because it's so much more patient.
Yeah, because Chanukah is R. And R is gemust, R is measured based on how much chayshach you have. So as the Deiros get deeper and deeper into the chayshach of Galus, the tzaddikim get to be more and more nispal for it. It's like, holy mo! Look at this R that's being made over here, right? So that's like something that I think just like is a message for us, a primistic dimension, to think, such kleine vermelach. What are we going to be doing over here? Being nispal. From the Yontiv of Chanukah, right? Who are we to be nispal from the Yontiv of Chanukah? And the answer is Hagufa. We have the mostest pilots because we get to see the most, because we live in such a chayshach. When you come out of the chayshach and also get blinded by the Ar of Chanukah, right? For us, it's most relevant. So that's why Chanukah really, as the Deiros progress, I would suggest that the Yontiv of Chanukah shines brighter and brighter. And Adarab, Kafi, where we're holding, we should recognize that we have the most to gain. We have we can literally wear antennas to pick up the most R on this Yontif, because this is where we're holding. We're holding a mamash in the Gresta Chayshach. Now it's interesting that in Unzer Dar, it's mamash Zelu Mazeh, right? The whole world is sitting in the dark with their little neiros the whole year. You know what I'm saying? Literally sitting there the whole year in the dark with your little neiros, right? And we have a competing R, an R that is literally, whites out, the alternative R that everyone is so davik in nowadays. It would not be a Chanukah share if you did not mention the Beis Yosef's kasha. And me and I were learning a little Mikrei Kodesh early in the week from Chief Pesach Frank, and he starts off his Chanukah shtiklach with the Beis Yosef's kasha. Right, everyone knows the Beis Yosef's kasha, that why do we have 8 days of Chanukah? When there was enough shemen for one day, so Mela, you only needed 7 days of Nes, because they had enough shemen for one day. So one day they were taken care of. Nes only provided a net gain of 7 days of Nes. That's the question. And the question is sort of like this question that everyone looks at. Whoa, what a question. You have to have thousands of answers. And and he brings down a few answers from the Beis Yosef. He brings down 3 answers. One answer is, well, Eina Chanami, if they would have filled the cups up totally with the Pach Shemen, right, and it would have burned for 8 days, so Taka would have only been a Nes for 7 days, because he had enough Shemen for 1 day. However, that's not what they did. For whatever the reason, that's not what they did, right? They put 1/8 of the Shemen that they should have done, and Mela, when they put 1/8 of the Shemen, should have gone out. Instead of burning for 15 hours, it should have burnt for an hour and a half, let's say, hour and 3/4. And it burnt the entire night. Pella, right? That was an ace. Okay. So that's one of the terms of the Beis Yosef. Okay? But what he's suggesting in his teretz is that if they didn't do this, if you filled up the nearest totally and they burned for 8 days straight, there wouldn't be 8 days of Nes. Here, there's 8 days of Nes, because every day, 1/8 the amount burned 8 times the amount. 8 times as long as it should have. So I was it struck me like this is really strange, right? Why do you assume if they would have filled it up all the way and burned for 8 days, it wouldn't have been 8 days of Nes? The same way that when you incrementally put it in 1/8 at a time, 1/8 of the shemen is burning for 8 times the amount, so that's an Nes every day. So if you would have filled it all up at once, and it burnt for 8 days straight, the assumption would be that what? That every day an eighth of the cup went down, and you could see a nace every day, right? If the nace is that something burns slowly, right? So you would expect that if you lit the menorah and you filled up the cup totally, right? Every day would go down an eighth, right? And you have the same exact nace if you fill it up all at the same time, versus putting in an eighth at a time, right? L'chayra, it would be the same exact thing, right? After the first day, say, oh wow, the cup is almost full. It only burnt an eighth of the oil, and it lasted the entire night, right? And so why did you have to say that they divided it up an eighth at a time, right? And they have to come up with all sorts of questions. Why did they put an eighth? What are they doing? And that could be Yitzhak mitzvah, right? And it sounds like they're being Saimach Halanes. You can't eat Saimach Halanes. All the problems that it made. So I was thinking, I'm not sure exactly what the cheshbon is, but I work it out together, that l'chayra, the nace of Chanuka is not the nace that shemen burns very slowly, right? The nace is not, wow, slow burning shemen. What a nace. We were able to burn the shemen slow, right? Whatever it is, like the nace it's not a nace in the shemen, right? The shemen lasted longer. The nace is that there was R here without shemen to provide for it, which means that the R that was here was an R nisi, right? So if the R over here is an R nisi, so then it's not R that's coming from shemen. It doesn't even need to slow burn the shemen. You would expect that if you have an R nisi, the shemen would not go down b'chlal, right? That's what you expect.
The shemen was just there as a tevedik surface layer.
They weren't Saimach Halanes, right? And what you would expect is that it wouldn't diminish b'chlal, right? You would light the menorah, and what happens is when there's R nisi over here, right? That means the R is being provided from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not an R that's being provided by the tev of the shemen burning. Mainly, you would not expect the shemen to be diminished b'chlal, right? That's a chayr. If that's the case, so let's view the Beis Yosef kasha, through that view. You fill up the cup totally; it lasts for 8 days, right? Now you could say, well, they were watching it; it went down an eighth each night, right? You could say that, right? But the assumption would be is that if it's burning an arnis, it's not going down b'chlal all 7 days. Right? If it's not going down b'chlal all 7 days, so then when did they finally get used up? On the 8th day. So the 8th day wasn't the nace. Right? So Mela, that seems to be his kasha, right? That if you put it all in, mistama, if there's a nace over here, whenever it's burning, and B'tar is ar shal nace, there's nothing to do with shemen. The shemen is not diminishing. Finally, when the shemen is diminishing, now you're holding by tava, and the shemen gets diminished.
What if it didn't diminish at all?
Huh?
What if it didn't diminish at all? Then they bring in the new oil, and we still have full cups.
No. So because the teretz is, it did diminish. But after 8 days, it was gone.
I'm saying that the spitz nace would be that you have 8 full cups, like eight full days of full cups, and it never goes down. And by the time they have the new oil, like we don't need the new oil.
Yeah, and you never need the new oil, and we keep Chanukah 365 days a year. I'm saying at the end of the day, it lasts for 8 days and it was gone after 8 days. But the point is that if it calls minus nisi, it's not diminishing, right? So now get back to Beis Yosef's teretz. They divided it up into eighths, right? So if what I'm saying is true, right? What happened is what's his teretz? His teretz is that taka every day, right? It burnt our nisi until the last eighth of the day, right? And then the last eighth of the day is when the taka went down. Meaning every morning there was nothing left. But what was understood is that for the first 7/8 of the night it was just our nisi, and then the last eighth of the night it burnt up. It was gone. right? Meaning, ultimately, Kol Zman there's a nace, right? The nace is going to last as long as that nace needs to be lasting. So maybe that's the what his kash is. His kash, you put the whole thing in, and it's burning b'taris nace. It's not going to start diminishing an eighth at a time, right? Then it comes out that there isn't an R nisi over here. It's coming out that there is that there's slow burning oil.
Wouldn't it be the other way around that the nace comes in after the teva has been maxed out?
I would say you could say it that way. You could say the nace comes after the teva has been. You could say it that way. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's a better way to look at it. Nace comes in. A nace has to be chal on some sort of zach. Meaning you have let's say they mishama l'shem like I'm a lemaim l'chaimitz lidalik, right? We have to put chaimitz in. Don't put anything in. Misha Amal L'Shem like lid like believe with Beliklum, right? Taras is that nace, even a nace has something that is chal on, right? So you're saying yes, right? So when you put in the whole thing, right? And if you put in the whole thing, then it would go b'derech teva. Once the teva is done, then it will continue burning for 7 days, right? So the kash is the first day, it's not an ace, right? So the kash really be on the first day if you're saying it that way, right? You could say it the opposite way, that it starts b'nace, and then when you don't need the nace anymore, right? The nace is chal on something of teva. So I have the oil here. Now the R comes b'taris nisi and ganzen. When I no longer need it because I'm holding by the last day, so then it starts burning b'derech teva. You could say it on either side of the 8 days.
The Baba Sali was driving around in the car and they were running on empty. They were running on empty l'chatchila, or first they ran to empty and then they were running on empty. Because it make the whole. You can bring a rye from Baba Sali, right? That the way talk works, the gauge is talk on empty, right? So first it uses up teva, and then it continues. The case would be is that when teva stops being the mitzias, then the nace comes in.
The nace picks up, right?
That's ultimately how you marker the nace,
right?
It has to be. It would make more sense to say that the teva first.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's as far, but you could definitely bring a ride from Baba Sali that the gas gauge was on empty and then the gas gauge didn't stay on full, right? So you could bring a ride from there. Anyway, so Bekitzer, right? What the Nes of Chanukah wasn't that there was something miraculous with the oil. The Nes of Chanukah is that they had a gilui of an R, right? That was not a gashmistic R b'chlal, right? What is this R that is non-gashmist R that's being as gal on top of the menorah, right? What is this R? This is the R of Sheishis and Meibreishis, right? And the Ramazim, which we spoke about, or Haganas in last year, but the Ramazim about the R of Chanukah being the R of Sheishis and Meibreishis, which is a R, which we'll call it an R bahir, an R that you can see me Saifa Ilam at Saifa Ilam, and Befrat, like we were saying before in these diaries of Chayshech, that the R is all the more ready to be experienced, because experience is starker when the greater the contrast is. But that's what this R is. This R is not that the oil burns and you have light of oil burning for oil or a slow burn oil. Right. What's going on is over here is that there was a zchus that the Chashmonaim had, that they were able to bring an R that was a totally ruchnistic R. The right. Having said that, the Teretz said the Beis Yosef Kasha also becomes much more pashut. The Kash is, why do we have 8 days, right? So, if you understand that, when you don't understand what the nace of the R is, you just think it's something that has to do with the amount of oil, and the nace has to do with the ratio of oil to today's burn. So you have a kasha. But the moment you understand what the nace is, and the nace is not slow burning oil, the nace is a gili of R. And if you identify what is this R, right? This is R of something that is on a very high level R, right? Which it will appear to be this R has to do with R of Bina, right? B'nei Vina Yimei Shmaina, like we say, right? So if you understand that this R is something called R of Olam Habina, right, which is Lamala from Teva. Teva is 7, right? Olam Habina is 8. Bina is the 8th Sphira from Milmata Lamala, right? So if you recognize that the R that they experienced over here was the R of Bina, so then Bina is Shmaina, right? And the reason we have 8 days is because when you have a Gili of such an R, this is a Shmaina Dika R, and a Shmaina Dika R has 8 days of celebration. So it's not so much that we have to. It's measure for measure, right? Kafi the amount of days that we could put our finger on actual nace. We have to celebrate. We're not celebrating Nisim. We're celebrating his galas. When his galas is a Shmini Dika his galas, right? So Mela we have Shmini Yamim of Yantif. It would sort of say like this. We pass on like a Beisel, all right? Milan B'Kodesh. What does it mean Milan B'Kodesh? Every day we're moving up in Madrega, right? And the Madrega we have to read is we move up 8 Madregas, right? We move up 8 Madregas over Chanukah. We're Milan B'Kodesh. Well, how many Madregas did they go up on Chanukah? You know what? They went up 8 Madregas. It's going to take you 8 days to move up those 8 Madregas. You want to know why there's 8 days? Because that's the Madregas Chanukah gave us, and those are the Madregas we have to move up. You know, another name for Sphira, I told you Bina is a Sphira Ashminis. You know another day for Sphira is? Yom. Yom is a Sphira. Okay? And Mela, Shmoni Yom, means this is how you move up to the Olam Habina. And that's what's really merumas. And we say in the Haneris Halalu, B'nei Vina, Yemei Shmoina, right? The Babash is coming to answer the B'nei Seis Kasha in Haneris Halalu. You want to know why is Yemei Shmoina? Because B'nei Vina. And B'nei Vina means we have to get up to this Madrega of Yemei Shmoina. The Bnei Yisachar brings down interesting from the Rekeach. He answers Beises Kasha, and it may the Havana behind it may be similar to what I'm saying. He said the Rekeach says like this: you have in Parshas Emor, you have the parsha of the Yom Tovim, and the Torah brings down all different Yom Tovim. And the pasuk says, Eila Moed Hashem, right? It goes to all the Moyadim, and after it goes to the Mayadim, it brings down the Parsha of Menorah. Okay, it brings down the Parsha of Menorah. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could just do it out of the Chumash. I think I'd be able to find it.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, Pasuk towards the end of Parashat Emor brings down Daber b'nei Yisrael Matam Moed Hashem Shitkois Mikray Kodesh Elim Moed. It goes through Elim Moed Hashem Mikray Kodesh, goes through all the Yom Tovim, and after it finishes Yom Tovim, the next Parashat is Parashat HaMenorah, right? Vaydaber Hashem Moshe but Tzavos b'nei Yisrael Yichol Hashem Zayizach Kos Lamar Lahaluf Ner Tamid. Comes along the Rekeach, and he says here is Meram is Yom Tov Chanukah. Why did they put the Parsha Menorah, right? To tell me about the mitzvah Halakas Menorah, because Chanukah is one of the Yom Tovim. So we just finished with the Yom Tovim. Mela, we go to Yom Tov Chanukah is Merumas in the Parsha Menorah and Halakas of Menorah right after the Yom Tovim. He says an interesting diak. He says the pasuk says Lahalois Ner Tamid. Ner is singular. Lahalois Ner Shashed. Well, he makes the diak just a little right. That's where we're going. But it says Lahalois Ner Tamid, and then it says in two psukim later Al Menorah Yarach Es HaNeiros starts off with Ner and ends up with Neiros. It says Meram is like Beis Hillel that you start with one and you move up, to multiple Neiros like Beis Hillel. So he says, now you know why there's 8 days of Chanukah. Because what's the Yontif that's right before, what's the last Yontif? Last Yontif is Sukkot. Right, my last minute list is Sukkot, and right after Sukkot comes Chanukah. The smichas of Sukkot to Chanukah is to show you that Chanukah is 8 days. Okay? The fact that Torah puts Chanukah and Sukkot together, that means Chanukah is a Sukkot type of Yontif. How many days is Sukkot? They have 8 days. Chanukah has 8 days. So here you have the Rekeach, and he's telling me that the Indian of Chanukah is something lamala from being able to quantify, nace. Right? The Indian of Chanukah is a Yontif. No, what type of Yontif? It's a Shmini Teki Yontif. It's like Sukkot, right? And the Memela, whatever the Havana is, right? But the Havana has to be that the Iris of Chanukah and the Iris of Sukkot, right? They are taka one and the same. It's interesting. The Chanukah, the 8th day is Zois Chanukah, which would correspond to Shmini Atzeres, which is something very miyuchad for the Yontif of Sukkot. And the 8th day of Chanukah also has this union of very miyuchad and Zois Chanukah. It's just interesting that Beis Shammai says, right, that you're Parchas V'Heilich. You start off with 8 and you go down 7, 6, 5. And the Gemara brings down a different pshatim. One pshat is Keneged Yamim Ha Nechnasim, right? Beis Shammai says the first night of Chanukah you light 8 candles. The next night you light 7. Imagine goes down 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it says no, you go up. So one of the reasons that the Gemara brings down, according to Beis Shammai, that you go down, right, is connected like the Parei HaChag. On Sukkot, the first day you have 13 parim, next day 12, right? And you look at the Gemara like, what does Parei HaChag have to do with Chanukah? Ma kesher, right? As Yisra Keach, right? Sukkot and Chanukah are two competing Yom Tovim, right? Just like the Yontif of Chanukah. Just like the Yontif of Sukkot, it's unbelievable, right? You start with 13 parim, right? 7 days Sukkot, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 parim. That's what I said. What's on the last day of Sukkot? Shmini Atzeres? Par Echad, right? According to Beis Shammai, Haflafela, right? Also, your Parchas V'Heilich, what do you end up on the last day of Chanukah? 1. Mamish like Sukkot, you know what I'm saying? So once you do a Keach, all of a sudden, that's where Beis Shammai got this Sushtel. It seems like such a mundane Sushtel, right? Sukkot to Chanukah. But that comes out very interesting, his Sushtel.
It gives you a nice glimpse of Eila Kim Chayim.
Right. So
it's not just like all.
No, right. So it comes to half of a fella, right? Because Beis Hillel has a dig from the pasuk Ner Neiros, but Beis Shammai says, but we have 8 days. Right,
Parsha.
8 days for Sukkot. So let's look at the areas of Sukkot. There seems to be some sort of diminishing. Now, Parei Chag is the state that's connected the Ayin Umas ends up being 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 equals 70, which is that the Ayin Umas should be Parchas V'Heilich. But so you'd have to know how to. I'm sure there's larger drushes on it, but just generally the fact that Beis Shammai is zustelling the Yontif Chanukah to Sukkot is all of a sudden not such like Arbus Sivan type of connection. The let me just furious with this idea, the following thought. The Eisa Chanukah is unique. It's very unique from all the Nisim Klal Yisrael's history. I think the Kedushas Levi making this point. I'm not sure he made this point. I'm not sure if he expanded it this way, but he made this point that all Nisim in Klal Yisrael's history generally the way Nisim worked was Hashem came and he made a nace. Right? There was generally not the hisayers of Klal Yisrael being to a point that warranted the nace. Right? I mean, on Purim, you had Mordechai and Esther. They were doing good things. They were acting like good Yidden. Esther was Ma'aseh Nefesh on some level to go into, to go b'derech hateva into Achashverosh, into his, to meet Achashverosh, when she was afraid she was going to get killed, when she wasn't invited. However, the Nes of Chanukah sort of takes the cake when it comes to Mesiras Nefesh, right? And the Yontiv of Chanukah is really a time where we have to recognize that Mesiras Nefesh and Mesiras Nefesh to the max is something that ultimately brings all the iris of Chanukah down. And when it comes to the kavanas of Neres Chanukah, it's interesting. What are the kavanas of Halakas Ner Chanukah? Right. So I think I mentioned this last year, maybe. But if you look at the Bnei Yissaschar, right, if you say the L'Shem Yichud of the Bnei Yissaschar before, you're an Einikol, no?
Bnei Yissaschar?
Oh no, who are you, Einikol? Shla. Bnei Yissaschar in his David Korn's name, Bnei Yissaschar. The Bnei Yissaschar in his Bnei Yissaschar in his L'Shem Yichud. So he says. He says. He says. Hey, chashuv Mrs. Chanukah kilu kivadi kol kavanos shekivnu hakainim, right? Shekivnu hakainim. Shekivnu hakainim. B'shah, right? The kavanas, my kavanah layim should be the kavanah that the kainim had. B'shah. What do you think he's going to say? The kavanah that they had when what? When they lit the menorah, my kavanah should be their kavanah lighting the menorah. When they lit the menorah in the base midrash, he says nothing of the sort. My kavanah should be k'maya kavanah shekivnu hakainim misharsi Hashem b'shah sheheru lamavis nafsham aman kvoid shimcha gadol. Right, the kavanah I have. Gadol v'hanar. No, it leaves that one. Gadol v'hanar. Leaves like yeah. Right, b'shah sheheru lamavis nafsham. Right, when they were mafkir their nefesh, right, they just laid it out on the line, right, and they laid it out on a line that was just like it literally was, on the surface looked like a suicide mission, right, and they just totally were mafkir their nefesh in their avodah, in their quest to be Mikadosh Shem Shemayim, and they had no choice. The chila was so dark. Right, the chila was so great. The base of Migdash was nechrav. The Yavanim were talking about totally obliterating Klal Yisrael, and what was necessary was people just lay it all on the line. But ultimately, that's what the kavanah that the Bnei Yissaschar is megalat us. The kavanah of Halakas Neres Chanukah is this Indian of Mesiras Nefesh. And that when a person lights a Neres Chanukah, he has to really think that I'm willing to be Ma'aseh Nefesh for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in this world, in today's day and age, right, Mesiras Nefesh is something that people sometimes think that it's Mesiras Nefesh. This is Mesiras Nefesh. I had Mesiras Nefesh for this. I had Mesiras Nefesh for that. You call it Mesiras Nefesh. What you say is Mesiras Nefesh had in 5 minutes, you haven't had in 5 years. But ultimately, at least in our minds, we can make some sort of cheshbon on Nefesh, right? We talk about how different tzaddikim talk about how I saw my siddur. Right, well, the famous Tzatla Katan from Rebbe Bali Melech, right? He says that he's supposed to, if a person's mechaven, he sits in his mizbainin, and he pictures, graphically that there's an eish that's barad leiv hashemayim, and you throw yourself in it to be nisaf Kedush Hashem. Just this kavanah of being Ma'aseh Nefesh mamash to Kadosh Baruch Hu is a kind of mitzvah v'ikdash b'sach b'nei Yisrael. There's a kavanah that's brought down in Voltzion every day. When you say Baruch Hu Elokeinu Shabban L'Chvaydu V'Loim Anatayim Naslan Tarasem Zechayol Not HaBesechenu, right? You're supposed to be mechaven over there also Mesiras Nefesh. You're supposed to be mechaven Mesiras Nefesh in every part of the davening, but specifically over there, it's sort of at least if I said it brings down from maybe from the Arizal, maybe from the Zohar, that you're supposed to be mechavan. Literally, this mamash the idea that the Rabbi Melech says you're supposed to be mechavan over there in.
Where's the line up with what you're saying?
What do you mean? Why is it involved here? By Baruch Elokeinu? I think that it describes that's maybe b'chai oil not hapesechenu. Let me see which well, there is a Rashi Tevis over here that they zustel ba'esh.
Elokeinu Shebrana.
Which one? Baruch. Yeah. It's Ba'esh. Baruch. Oh, they take out who. They don't have who. Who's not? They're not guys. Who? It's Baruch Elokeinu Shebrana. Vayda and it's Ba'esh. Right. But the idea would be is, right, that if you wanna bring out v'chai oil not hapesechenu who yiftach libeinim serasai yasim b'libein amos v'yasi, you want to get all these madrigas. You're saying who yiftach, he's going to give me these tremendous madrigas. You can give these tremendous madrigas. What are you giving in return to get these tremendous madrigas? Teretz is, if you mechavim when you say this, that bona ba'esh v'amayim, that we're literally ready to be nisav hakadosh Hashem l'man kvayit shimcha agado. So this avad that brings all these iris of yiftach libeinim serasai yasim b'libeinu avasa v'yirasai. And that's maybe just something to think about on Chanuka. Chanuka is, yes, it's the time to eat a lot of jelly donuts, but it's also a time to think about literally being willing to be Ma'aseh Nefesh. And when a person is willing to be Ma'aseh Nefesh, and he's sitting there by his Chanuka thinking about the Choshech of Galus and our willingness to do what it takes to get us out of it, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'ez Hashem will give us a tremendous ha'ara, enlightenment, and be zeicha to be nender from the iris of Chanuka and have the ability to really transform and enlighten our lives for the whole year. Gittin Feilach and Chanukah.